Love it. One mind-blowing fact about me. I wouldn't necessarily say it's mind-blowing, but oh, this is shit. Stop! Caught me on the hop there, straight out of the gate. Mind-blowing fact for me is that I wouldn't necessarily say it's mind-blowing, but something that I tend to keep hidden is that, talking about ultra dad community, it tends to be quite an alpha, or at least perceived alpha place. I had a background as a young child growing up as an ice skating dancer. I mean, what about that? From being a figure skater on ice to going and playing some relative level rugby. Bit of a change in direction over time.
Oh well, that's awesome. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so that was
I can't let you go. I can't let you go there.
so I can't believe you got this out of me after about 20 seconds in. So I grew up in Inverness in North Scotland. My mum was an ice skater when she was much younger, and she'd kind of signed me and my big sister up, and very shortly after that she got roped into being a teacher, and that was pretty much it from, I can't remember what age, but certainly kind of early primary school through to late primary school. And it was funny that way where you kind of started, it was all grand, something you enjoyed, good people around, and then slowly but steadily that kind of like boys became more boys and girls became more girlish, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there at kind of 10 years old thinking, not really sure how I feel about this. On the one hand, I quite enjoy it, but how comfortable am I talking about it with all my pals when I'm playing football or rugby or skateboarding with them?
Wow. Do you know, we are very similar. My mum always wanted me to be a dancer and do dance classes.
Well, I'd like to say it stood me in good stead and helped me meet the future Mrs. Cooper on the dance floor in my university days. But I'm not sure she'd be saying anything about my dancing.
Well, do you know Lomachenko? He's a featherweight or lightweight boxer.
Yeah.
His dad pulled him out of boxing and made him do dancing to get the footwork, and then put him back into boxing once he'd mastered the footwork. Do you know that?
There we go. Could have been a pro boxer. There we go.
Could have been. You can see him when he's in the ring. He dances around, and his footwork's like impeccable. You don't get that level of footwork unless you're comfortable dancing on ice or dancing on the dance floor.
I should say it was bookended towards the end of my secondary school days, where we ended up doing some kind of ballroom dancing. But that was a weird one, where you had all the lads who were playing rugby on the Saturday, but on the Friday night we'd be at the ballroom dancing lessons with the girls in the school. That was about as close as we got to it.
Okay, well that might just be the intro, because that was brilliant. Let's just talk about your kids. How many kids you got and ages?
Yeah, so dad of two. We've got a girl called Esme who's 5 and just coming up to the end of her first year at primary school, and her little brother is Mac, who is 2 and a bit and is an absolute wrecking ball of a boy.
Nice one. Did you get caught off guard with the boy after having the girl first?
Tell me about it. Esme, we thought we had our hands full with Esme growing up, but my goodness me, when the young lad comes into the scene, it's a completely different game. Esme, on the one hand, likes nothing better than sitting down with books or crayons, or generally diligently sitting there playing games, whereas he's just an absolute tyrant rampaging around the house.
Yeah, I read once that there's 2 spikes of testosterone between 2 and 3 and 6 or something, and the level of testosterone in the body for the child is like something ridiculous, like 800 times or 800% or something. So you can kind of sympathize in a way if they're going out of control. That level of testosterone must be pumping through their body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 2 boys, 5 and 3, so they're turning 6 and 4. They're at that stage where they're loving to wrestle and scrap. I encourage it a bit, but the other day the older one had the younger one pinned down, and the younger one had nothing to do but to bite the older one's leg. And we have a couple of rules if they're wrestling. There's no punching or kicking and no biting. That's the only rules. They can go fair game after that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's kind of parenting 101, but there's definitely a bit of encouragement in the Cooper household to big sister Esme just to look after herself a bit. If the little fella's kind of throwing his weight about, she shouldn't be shy and just putting him back in his place.
Let's talk about, since we're on dad life, what's been the biggest challenge for you as a dad?
I think probably like all dads, when kiddo number one arrives on the scene, and I just me and my wife both in the same situation of just feeling like your world just condensed and concentrated down into like one room at the outset. It was like little baby, you're in the bedroom or the living room, and that's all, like your world's just there, and almost a feeling of like claustrophobia in those early days. And I'd definitely say like that was the biggest adjustment for me after Esme was born, from previously having all the time in the world to be out on the bike, running in the hills, at the gym, whatever it was that you were doing. Your time was yours, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, hang on, I didn't quite know this was the new world. Over time, though, realizing that like that's a kind of a period of time, and gradually like your horizons expand again. And now, like, compared, Esme's now 5, Mac 2.5, and both me and my wife now finding that time and making time to get back and do things on your own and regaining a degree of independence. Don't get me wrong, that sounds like having kids is the nightmare. It's the best thing in the world, but I think it's also important to like remember what you had your hobbies and your interests beforehand, and just because you have kids doesn't mean that they need to just disappear or be subsumed entirely. Like there's more to me than just being a dad.
Yeah, for sure. How have you adjusted? You've mentioned that you've worked out quite a lot and done the hills and things. How has that adjusted for you having the two?
Yeah, it's about balance, and also, for me, it's like there's a when it hits the weekend, like I work Monday to Friday, pretty fortunate in the job that, can flex time around the kids. Like we'll almost always have breakfast together, we'll almost always have dinner together. But even still, it's quite a small window to spend with them. And so when it hits the weekends, actually the desire to bugger off and head off to the Cairngorms for an entire weekend without them, knowing that you're not really going to see them, that's your kind of chance to see them over a 14-day window disappear. So like I think for me it's kind of, where do you want to spend your time, and then just trying to make sure that you can carve out a little bit of time for yourself.
Yeah, what does that little bit of time consist for you, or where do you get your enjoyment?
Yeah. So in terms of the kinds of things, I mean, I still, I talk about the hills, I still enjoy that, but they're kind of, realistically for me, that's a kind of twice a year long weekend away at most. Otherwise, about running, got a garage set up with, bike, rower, pull-up bars and things like that, just trying to stay active. So getting out of the bike, running, bit of touch rugby, North Berwicks touch rugby on a Monday night, love it. I hadn't played since kind of beginning my working career, so it was, 10, 15 years without really having played, but bloody love getting back into it.
Yeah, no, I've only been down a couple of times. The first time I went down to touch, the guys roped me into playing. I ended up coming out of retirement to play for North Berwicks. So yeah, don't do what I did, because I ended up finishing it by breaking my nose again for the second time in my face. I mean, taking a lot of punishment. I didn't actually look like this before I started playing rugby. I've had a good surgeon over the last few years of my career. So no, that's awesome that you're down at touch. Is there any other sort of social things you're doing with other dads, or what does that look like for you?
There's a few. There's some stuff like there's a couple of guys that got to know, either some that I knew from uni days who live out in the same town or have met through, and there's a few of us that try and what we term the middle age run club. We try to get out once a fortnight early morning, just 3 or 4 of us, a very light amble around and a bit of chat. It's nice getting out, spending time with some good folks and getting a bit of chat on the way around. And equally, just it's a quite a small, as you know, quite a small community here, and actually you get to meet a lot of good people very quickly, and it brings that kind of social side to it, whether it's pints, watching the rugby, or just being out and about with others at the weekend and their kids. It's a good spot.
Yeah, no, for sure. Is there any goals connected to that training you're doing at the moment? Is there anything on the horizon?
So last year was the first time in a long time that I actually had set up, talking about carving out time earlier, was like start of last year thinking, right, what, on a personal level, whether it's sports or other stuff, like what do you want to make time for and actually focus on it. So last year was just about doing more without necessarily a goal in mind. But, last year was like, just make sure you're doing something 3 times a week, half an hour ago at least. And it was good kind of consciously forcing yourself into doing that. And this year I was thinking, right, what next? There's a few things. We've got Loch Ness Tap, a cycle event at the end of the month up in Inverness, which is a sensational closed road route right around the shores of Loch Ness, which is a road that you never want to cycle on. I think it's the most dangerous. The A82 is, I think, Scotland's most car crash prone road. So you don't want to do that on your bike in traffic, but they close that off. That's sensational. I've done that the last couple of years. This year's just about how can you do it a bit faster? Not with any particular kind of time in mind, but the last few years have been a bit social. This time, go out and try and absolutely give it a blast. And then later in the year, I'm going to sign up for I have signed up for the first marathon over in Amsterdam, which was the result of a bit of prompting from some of the other dads in North Berwicks who are quite keen runners, basically coerced me into that.
Yeah, how far is the Inverness one? Firstly,
it's not terribly far. It's kind of Grand Fondo for cyclists, so it's just a bit over 100k, about 67 miles or something like that. It's quite a nice route that you can get around at a decent lick, but equally, take it easy as well if you fancy.
And that combines with you going back up home. You got family still up that way?
Yeah, mum's up there, so it's quite a nice return to get up there. The kiddos, last few years I've done with my wife, and the grandparents look after the kids and bring them down to cheer us on as we're coming back into the town at the end. Although we tend to be actually quick. The last couple of years we've been quicker than anticipated, so I think the kiddos have come down and actually missed us as we've already gone by. But that's a good spot to go back up and usually get a few beers in on the Saturday, some carb loading before the Sunday cycle.
So you've got the cycling, you quite enjoy the cycling. You've got the marathon. What are you hoping in terms of the marathon? Are you looking for a certain time, or are you just going to get it done?
It's pretty hard, having never done it and never really run it. I've done a half marathon once many years ago, and that was a kind of a relatively last minute entry and go and blast it. So in my head, I've got 3:30 as a time that a time without any basis for thinking that feels like a stretching but realistic target. I've not got into any kind of training yet. I'm kind of leaving that for early summer to get into it properly. But in my head, I think if you're doing a half in a bit over 1:30, trying to think, with it slowing it all down. But like I say, I've no real idea. I've got to get some miles into the legs and see how they're feeling.
Yeah. How are you feeling about it right now?
Naively optimistic, Nick. I think is how I'd phrase it. I've done a few 10Ks and think I'm ripping it, so I'm sure I'll be absolutely fine. But I suspect when I get out from a first run that takes me up beyond 20, I might be having a different answer.
Well, if you're consistent and you're doing the weekly run and the cycling, and depending on what that looks like in terms of your structure, I mean, you're in a pretty good place in terms of maintaining a good base. So
yeah,
anything's possible. I think there's a small percentage of people that actually run under 4 hours. So 3:30 is a quality goal. The one piece of advice, if you want it, is always from a first time marathon runner. I hardly trained for my first marathon, and I managed to do it in 4 hours 28. I think I beat my old man's time, but I ran within myself in terms of heart rate. So my sole goal was, I didn't care how fast I did it. It was that I was never going to go over 150 beats per minute in terms of heart rate. And that kept me going all the way till the last kilometre. Yeah, did it fine. But I'd say definitely train for it. And Have a structured training plan.
I was going to say that's some solid advice. Train. But it's true though, and that's why, like, when you're saying what's your target, it's quite hard to gauge, because it's like, yeah, okay, you can run at a relative pace over a short distance, but that's pretty much what everyone is saying. You're kind of trying to keep your heart rate in particular zones. Don't gut it, because you don't know what's coming. And some of my pals are running the Edinburgh Marathon this May time, and that's exactly their approach. So I think I'll just need to see how it's going during the training.
Yeah, I don't believe the race starts until the 30-kilometre mark, so that's when you actually start racing. And that 30 kilometres is just the warm up.
fills me with confidence.
No, I'm sure you'll be fine, and there's the Ultra Dad community with a few coaches in there, which will be able to help you.
And even just getting some of the chat from James on how to get out, testing your threshold zones and what have you. I've not gone out and done it yet, but it's some great kind of tailored advice to go out and then help build that into the training plan. So it's awesome.
Yeah, Jimmy was my first guest on the podcast. He's brilliant. He's an amazing runner himself. But I was like, when I was training for my ultra, I was like, I need to do this properly. Who am I going to speak to? And then someone introduced me to Jimmy, and then we've just had a really good relationship from there. And he's so knowledgeable that you say to him, I'm thinking about doing this. And he's like, yeah, that's achievable. And then let's work back from that and design a training plan. So he's really very, very good. And I mean, his running stats speak for itself in terms of 15 odd sub 3-hour marathons. So it's a good guy to learn from. Tell us maybe some advice that you might give to other soon to be dads or dads currently.
I think be kind to yourself and embrace the change, I think, is number one. I think probably for me coming through, there was a degree of like resisting the change, or I don't know, regretting, or like missing the loss of what you had before. Whereas actually when you then embrace it and realise, hang on, this is just a completely different world that you're living in, but infinitely better. It's just different. And once you get into that space, and you can be so much more grateful for all the elements when it stitches together. You're not missing those empty weekends to just fill it with whatever, but actually you're grateful for that 40-minute run that you've managed to nip out to get, and then you're back in time for breakfast with the kids on a Saturday morning, that sort of thing. So I think it's be kind to yourself, embrace it, and appreciate that this is just a new world you're living in, and enjoy it.
What about raising your kids?
Yeah, interesting. It's like both in like thinking about stuff I've done in the past, like whether it's managing others, leading other teams at work, or like doing some small coaching and sports stuff, and you think, God, it's the best like learning experience with your kids, like day in day out, and thinking, all right, these poor teams that I've been managing in the past in a work environment, I wish I know what I know now back then. And just like that, I think I'm probably relatively tough with myself, in the sense of like, you'll try and push stuff, or maybe not necessarily focus on the negative, but it's like, if I want to do that, then do that. And you realise very quickly, like, that like the encouragement and getting them to understand, like, for themselves, what's fun, what do they want to do, and how to do it, as opposed to trying to like tee it up in the other way, where, in the sense of like, oh, if you don't do this, you won't get that. Whereas it's like, well, what is it that you're wanting to do? And just like really simple things. I'm trying to think of things. There was something yesterday with Esme, my daughter, where my default reaction is just like, I'll just bloody put on, whatever it is, just bloody put that t-shirt on. And you're thinking, but if I do that, that's then going to lead to like 10 minutes of like crying and delay or whatever. Like, and whereas it's like, just give those extra couple of minutes to like let them come to their own conclusions. And okay, those 2 minutes might be a bit frustrating, but it's a heck of a lot easier than just like, trying to force the issue and then dealing with the aftermath of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our 3-year-old is particular about who chooses what he wears and when we get it and when he puts it on. So I just go with the flow. And if I got upset or angry about that at that point, I mean, that just ruined my day properly.
Yeah. I'd like to stop trying to, don't sweat the small stuff. There's things that like you can just want to like rush, or there's maybe little things that like you might pick up on them. And you just think, well, actually, how big an issue is that? I'm struggling for examples just now, but like there's an element of pick your battles, but also don't sweat the small stuff. And actually, you'd rather that they pick up on like the important things and not force it with the small stuff. And you think just how like applicable that is to everything. You always hear that in like elite sports people, whether it's on the rugby pitch or elsewhere. It's like the best coaches are those that give really simple and really clear messages. It's not intricate. It's not really verbose. It's not sitting down for ages talking stuff through. It's just there's 3 pointers. Go away and think about that and do that. And it's like, yeah, like it's the same stuff with kids. Like don't force it. Don't over talk. Just focus on the few important things and try and get them to understand that and take that on board.
What's the number one thing that you hope that you teach your kids?
For sure, kindness. It's a hugely underrated quality. Integrity. Now that's quite a weird one for a kid to understand, but it's like, and by integrity, I mean like understand themselves and that be true to themselves. So don't like try to understand yourself, know what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, know what you want, know what you don't want. And I think the sooner that, like for me, God, if I knew that from a younger age, think about not necessarily how much easier life would be, because it might be hard because you might not fit into what others are doing. But at least if you understand it, it's that confidence in yourself, which I think is a really important thing. And that's, I'm just thinking like with Esme in particular, it's something that we kind of talk about quite often. You see it from an early age. She'd be looking to us for validation, like down to silly things like, oh, do you like my new t-shirt? Do you like this drawing that I've done? Do you like this? Do you like that? And it feels like the kind of repeated phrase in our house is, what's the most important thing? Do you like it? And it's that, it's continually like that. Like, don't rely on others to support you or validate you in that sense. It's like, do you like it? Cool. Well, if you like it, who gives a fuck what others say? I don't know if this persuades. Who gives a damn what others think? If you like it, cool. Wear it, draw it, do it.
Yeah, I always like to tell my boys. So it's, say if someone says something about them and they get upset about us, it doesn't really matter what someone says. It's whatever you believe to be true.
Yeah.
So I completely understand that, and sort of finding your own path is a good objective. What about in terms of fitness and health for your kids then? Are you trying to include them in things that you're doing, or are you using that as your own time? What do you hope in that respect?
Good question. I think, again, we want them to try as many things, do as much, experience as much, not just in a fitness sense, but just generally, whether it's like music, like we're quite into music, playing, listening, trying to expose them to as much and as wide a variety of that as you can. And yeah, on like the sports side, we're not don't do park runs all together or anything like that, but we do spend a lot of time, like the four of us together as a unit at the weekends, doing whatever it is that we enjoy doing, whether that's us all out on the bikes, Mac in the bike seat and Esme out on hers. The weekend just passed, we were out climbing up Traprain Law, one of the hills in small hills in East Lothian. But for them, that's such an adventure. You're out climbing a mountain, picnic at the top, some Haribo sweeties on the way up and down to keep the energy going. And it's that kind of thing, as opposed to like, we're not at the stage of being down at the rugby pitches on a Saturday morning or out at a park run on a Sunday morning. but it's like, for us, it's a kind of lifestyle thing as much as the actual sport of the fitness. So it's being out on the beaches, out on the bikes, running about, playing, enjoying it, out in the hills, whatever that might be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, North Berwick and East Lothian's quite good for that. As you're getting a lot of time at the beach, and there's accessible hills and mountains and scalable things for the kids too. So they really enjoy living here. Apart from it's slightly too cold. But I'll get over
that. I'm seeing obviously New Zealand in the background. Where was home for you, and when did you make it over here?
Right there is Rotorua. Rotorua is where I grew up, but I spent a lot of time in Mount Maunganui, and it's very similar to North Berwick in a way, as there's a towering mountain right next to the beach and sort of beach lifestyle. I'd like maybe North Berwick to be a bit more accessible in terms of getting out on the boat, but doing surfing and stuff. But obviously there's Belhaven Beach just down the road, so that's a plan. Once the water warms up a bit with global warming, then I'll get out in the
a nice 6'4" suit, Nick, and you're absolutely grand. I've been in at Pease Bay, where you're in the water looking at snow on the beach, thinking, I don't want to get out because it's going to be cold. It's going to be colder out there than it is in here.
Yeah, I probably just need to invest in a good wetsuit. What sort of impact does having a healthy lifestyle have on your kids, do you believe?
I just think it's so important to your childhood. You want to feel good, and if you feel good, you're going to do more, and it's a kind of virtuous cycle. But how do we help the kids eat well? I don't mean that it's a strict diet of broccoli in the Cooper household, but it's generally, how do you just encourage them to adopt a healthy attitude to eating? So it's you eat as much as you want. That's not we're not forcing them to finish their plates every night, but just trying to normalise it, and just thinking, and just it's trying stuff. We're always saying, you always try and introduce new, different pieces of food on the plate alongside maybe what they're used to. Just try it. Don't care if you don't like it. You put it in and you just say, no, spit it out. Just try it, see it. And that's, you think, right, you're eating well, food's normal. You're kind of exercising, you're playing, you're having fun, and you're active. That's, for us, it's about an active lifestyle. And again, it just normalises that. I've spoken earlier, my wife and I are quite keen, cyclists, in the sense of getting out on the road bikes at the weekend, but also just as a way of getting around. We lived in Edinburgh beforehand. I used to work out at the airport, so you'd be on the bike every day as you're commuting. You go out to meet friends, you're out on the bike. So bikes is a very normalised way of us getting around, and we're always out, with the kids, either in we term the chariot at the back, the little drag along trailer, or Esme's on her own bike, Max in the seat. That tends to be how we get about and go places within a kind of 5-10 mile radius. Again, it just normalises that kind of behaviour, that you're out and about, you're in the fresh air, you're active. It's not always in the car to get places. And I think, again, it just becomes that slightly virtuous cycle, that they're feeling well, they're eating well, they're active, they're therefore sleeping better, and it just kind of, it keeps working like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, we lose our shit regularly at dinner time, when you spend hours over the stove and then the nose gets turned up. But you try and, again, talking earlier about don't sweat the small stuff. If they've eaten another 6 nights out of the 7, so what?
Yeah. Well, what's your number one go-to meal? I'm curious to add a bit more to my repertoire for the kids. What do they eat every time without fail that's healthy?
They love... Is it that healthy? I'd say it's relatively healthy. They love what we call Rice Krispie chicken, and so you just get some chicken thigh fillets, Rice Krispies, some panko breadcrumbs, just crunch them all up, a little bit on the outside, just a little bit of oil, roast them in the oven alongside some roasted veg. They're a bit wild for a roast potato and some roasted carrots and some roasted broccoli, so that tends to do the job. Nice little Friday night dinner in the Cooper household.
Nice one. Is that combined with mayonnaise or ketchup or What's the condiments?
It is, but on a strictly rationed basis. I mean, like, to be fair, now Esme's kind of grown out, and maybe it's just a kiddie thing. Like, Esme used to just like, it would be your chicken was just like the vessel for the ketchup, and Max in the same instance, like, where you're like, you can just dip it, and he ends up just like pushing everything aside. He's just dipping his fingers into the ketchup, and you're like, no, lad, come on. And, I mean, I enjoy some ketchup, but no one wants to mainline
it. Oh, my son follows a similar trait in terms of mayonnaise. I apparently used to eat mayonnaise like the tin film. So my middle boy, he loves mayonnaise, chicken with mayonnaise, chips with mayonnaise. And just
I just described that as a good palate, Nick. I mean that he's a man after my own heart. Refined palate we've got.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's just switch a bit more over to you in terms of dad and what sort of impact does being fit have in terms of being a good dad for you?
Yeah, hugely so. I think we've both obviously been through those like pretty dark early days where you're sleep deprived, you're reaching for the biscuit tin, you're wanting the sugar rush just to see you through, or the caffeine rush. And it felt pretty shit, didn't it? Whereas, so like healthy and active now is like, right, I'm not a great sleeper, but I try and get as much sleep as I can. You're eating well, you're healthy. And it just is like that energy. Like, it's being a dad can be a pretty demanding job. And if you don't have the energy for it, it can be difficult. If you're tired and you're crab it's very easy to not be the best version of yourself and, let out some of those bad behaviours, which you then instantly regret with the kids. So for me, yeah, being active, being healthy, looking after yourself, it's fundamental to being a good dad. It means that you've got more energy, you've got more time, you've got more patience for them, and you enjoy it more if you're well rested, well fed, and feeling good. It just makes it more enjoyable. Like for me, you totally notice the endorphins if you're exercising. If I'm running, like quite often at work, for example, work from home a decent chunk of the time, and it's so easy to just be stuck in front of the laptop for hours on end. And it's like, you know what, so just get out, quick 40-minute blast around the block on foot, or jump on the rower for 20 minutes. That's about all I'm capable of on that. But get out half an hour, and instantly you're buzzing, you're revitalised. And so again, with the kids, trying to fit that in, it makes you feel better. You're better to be around. They enjoy being around more with you.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're not feeling great, or your, say, body battery's low, how does your wife help you in terms of, obviously there's a partnership going on here. How does she fill the void for you, and what do you love about that?
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate in that we are quite different in many ways. And I would say, like, for example, we're for the most part, we're both on the more relaxed end of the spectrum, but we also get agitated about different things, but they're never the same. So, like, for example, if Kirsty's getting a bit aggravated or anxious about something, it's something that I'm just not fussed about, and equally vice versa. And so I think when it comes with the kids, like if there's something there and I'm about to lose the rag on something, or just you've lost your patience, it genuinely won't be bothering her. It allows you to kind of just like either step back, or it like checks you. That's what I was saying earlier about don't sweat the small stuff. If you've got someone else that's like, what are you bothering yourself about? Like, so what that, I can't think of the example, but so what, doesn't matter. And it instantly kind of like helps you rebalance and reset. If it goes the other way around, like sometimes Kirsty will be at the end of her tether on something because the kids will not let go of, we'll not let go of our legs, which tends to be a pretty common complaint, I think, for the mums, that the kids are just constantly like suffocating mum. And in those instances, I'll come in and you can just be the fun guy that you come out, you talk about your wrestling with the kids, but you come and grab them, drag them away, and instantly there's a slightly different role, and it helps, it helps Kirst out. So I think the fact that, we get vexed by other things helps, but that generally I think we're on the more laid back end of the spectrum. Downside to that is family holidays. We don't always plan those things very well. We turned up in Ireland a couple of years ago and arrived at the Shannon airport, and we looked at each other and then realised, no, we both thought the other one was going to organise the car hire. So that was us having our holiday on bus, as opposed to by car for a week's road tripping around the island. But these things happen.
So it's Nick here, just letting you know the audio that we had recorded and some absolute gold nuggets unfortunately was cut off at the end of that podcast recording. But if you want to find out more and learn more about Mike, the place to go is the Ultra Dad community. It's a free community where you can discuss your fitness goals, learn about strength and conditioning and mobility, overcome pain, get back on track if you've jumped off a little bit, and lots of advice from the dads about raising good kids. So again, thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. Apologies about the broken episode, but we're still learning, and every day 1% better moving forward. So thank you again. And if you're a dad listening to this podcast, have a look at the link in the show notes, the Ultra Dad community. It's a free community, and there's a bunch of really supportive, great guys in there. And I hope to see you in there soon. Cheers.